since I worked with Peter or since I had my own fund, I've always invested in and out of Japan. Quite different culture, its own peculiarities, but we've always had very good experience there, mostly because we're disciplined about the price we're paying. And I know that's a market where a lot of people have negative comments, but I think it's a good example of, as a book that recently came out on Peter, there's always something to do, and even within a market like that, we're able to find stuff to do. Some of the things we've been buying in Japan, I break the Japanese thing into two components. One is stuff with kind of Western corporate governance, and which is probably 2/3 of my Japanese position, maybe a little bit less now. And then the other portion is stuff that I think is just statistically cheap. And under the statistically cheap stuff, what I'm looking for is something that's trading at 1/3 of its high in the last 5 years. So basically down by 2/3 over the last 5 years, and has more than $1 billion market cap, and trades below book. Funny enough, between dividends and share repurchases, Japan actually does a fair amount of that. And one of the things that struck me about Japan that's a little bit different, certainly different from Canada, and maybe a little bit different from the US, is usually when a company says it's going to repurchase shares, it does. Quite often in North America, someone will say they're going to repurchase shares, and then 2 years later they haven't repurchased more than a fraction of what their total authorized repurchase was. But in Japan, Monex, I think at the end of May last year, said it was going to repurchase 6% of its shares. It was completed by the end of June, so it did it. The initial mistake I made, and perhaps it's one that other people make as well, is they assume that the Japanese are doing it wrong and they'll figure it out and they'll do it the North American way, the American way, or you just need to tell them enough times how you think they should do it and they'll do it. And I don't think that approach works in Japan. So if you want to make a corporate governance bet in Japan, you might orient your portfolio a little bit differently than I do. I think I've been a little bit more accepting of, all right, this is what they do, and I'm just going to make sure that's factored into the price I pay. And this is the companies we've been involved with. I've seen very little evidence of self-dealing. I've certainly seen maybe capital decisions that you might not think are optimal, but haven't been necessarily completely bad either.